Hello and welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers, Chandigarh edition. Now, in today's newspaper, this first news is important. Recently, the government has decided to hike the MSP, minimum support price. Now, in this context, Niti Aayog has raised certain concerns. They are saying that fiscal burden will increase, plus it will raise concerns with reference to our India's commitments in WTO. So all that we are going to study over here. We have a lot more detailed article than the one that you see over here. Now, after Chandrayaan 3, ISRO is saying that on 2nd September, they will launch its solar mission. So Aditya L1. So that is the name of the program. So here you can see on the front page also. So we have an explainer. There we will study. And we will study what this L1 really is. Now moving on to the next topic. This is about recent news concerning suicides of students in Quota. So in this context, we have a national suicide strategy, a suicide prevention strategy. It was proposed by the previous Vice President, Venkaiah Naidu. Now we have more content on the same, so that we will study. Now this can be GS1, this can be GS2, GS1 society, GS2, most likely GS2 because it is something that the government is doing, right? So it should be part of GS2. Then again, what is the government doing for intellectually challenged children? So there are people who have some children who have mental health issues at the early age. So what is the government doing? So here we have a short interview from a person a person working in this field in Chandigarh. So that we will see as to what all is happening. So that is obviously we can expect that the same thing can be replicated in other areas also, other cities, states also. In Haryana, the Deputy Chief Minister is having some problems with the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly. And there is a concern associated with short duration discussion and calling attention notice. Obviously, these are part of your Lakshmikant book as well. We should know briefly as to what all these are, what are the provisions. Moving on, local news actually, state specific. Waste water, how to recycle and reuse waste water. Now, this is a very important subject matter. We can look at the need for a wastewater policy, look at the issue of grey water. So these are important topics that can be prepared, especially in the light of concerns associated with scarcity of water. So why not use wastewater, treat it and use it for non-drinking purposes maybe. Okay, zoning of floodplains. Floodplains should be zoned, hazardous areas should be known. Right, so that mapping should be done, but why is it not taking place? What safeguards are in place? What is the National Green Tribunal saying? So all that data we are getting it from this article. Then Niti Aayog's report on issues concerning real estate that was submitted some time back. Very few points have been mentioned over here. Self-respect marriage. In history, modern history GS1, you would have come across self-respect movement. Right, so with the cultural movement chapter, self-respect movement is also there. So I will link self-respect marriage with self-respect movement. So that's important. Okay. From editorial and opinion section, I lost now space. I didn't have space to write. So in editorial and opinion section, there is a continuation of artificial intelligence. That is, we should have a global framework on artificial intelligence. Yesterday, I covered it quite exhaustively. So I think that is good enough. We will revisit briefly. With reference to, I have covering another article. This is with respect to BRICS. So yesterday we did that expansion of the BRICS is a good thing. Today we have an opinion which raises concerns about the expansion of the BRICS. So what I have done is I have collated the two, that is the pros and the concerns associated with the expansion of the BRICS. So we have a comprehensive thing now. Okay, international, same old news. Economy, geo is Reliance, hierarchy, change, succession plan. Those things are mentioned. Right. So very briefly, we can cover all those things. Okay. So let me do all this, and then I'll come to this news concerning MSP, minimum support price. So first one is talking about Adani shares. So short selling in Adani shares led to gains for 12 firms, 12 companies. This is the Enforcement Directorate reporting to Security Exchange Board of India, which is the regulator of stock market in India. And by the way, SEBI is a statutory body. That is, it was created via a statute or an act of the parliament. Now, what is short selling? Short selling is an approach where investors believe that the prices will fall. They make a bet that the share prices will fall. So they sell the shares. And with the selling of the shares, by its very nature, it actually leads to fall in prices of the shares. So with the fall in prices, the investors plan to buy it at a lower price, and they book profit. So that is the approach. So Heidenberg, there was a research body which raised certain concerns about Adani company, its financial conduct. It reported, and with it, short selling of Adani shares had taken place. So Enforcement Directorate is saying that some wrongdoing may have taken place. It benefited 12 companies. Names have not been mentioned. Rover thing I told you, Sun mission I told you. So that will be there in the explainer. We have beautiful diagram. So there I'll explain it. Okay. Next is Quota coaching industry falls short on safety net as suicides touch 8-year high. Now, obviously, coaching industry, a lot of pressure. Deaths are taking place, suicide deaths are taking place. Now, with reference to suicide deaths, I think we should prepare this from exam point of view. I have shared an article with you, this article on the on my Telegram channel as well, and I've given you a structure as to how to prepare it. Okay, I have given you a structure as to how to prepare it. So first of all, you have to mention as to how many suicide deaths are taking place. 65% of them is from the youthful people, right? So that one thing you can mention. And for this, we have certain initiatives. Suicide prevention strategies are there. Some of national health, mental health policies there, which deals with the issue of mental disorders, reduction of suicide. So that is there. Then we have some provisions of the Indian Penal Code, for instance, decriminalization of suicide or decriminalization of section 309 of the IPC. Further, we have certain national palliative care, Ayushman Bharat, Nasha Mukti Abhiyan. So all these things are also there. So which may be linked to suicide. Now, besides this, the government, sometime back, 2-3 years back, they came up with National Suicide Prevention Strategy. Now, this includes, first thing is surveillance. So surveillance should be done so that observation should be there as to if there are any signs of a person who may commit suicide or some depression-like thing is noticed. So surveillance should be done. You have identified or a likelihood. So counseling should be there, counseling sessions. So the next stage is counseling, morale boosting and everything. In the Indian Express paper only, in the policy only psychiatric support is mentioned. Right. So counseling / psychiatric support shall be provided. Okay. Then we have added now some points. So sensitization should take place. Sensitization of all people, sensitization should take place. We can have awareness programs, awareness initiatives. We can have awareness on suicides in the educational curriculums in school level, etc. That knowledge should be provided so that people are sensitized. Further, we should focus on engagement in community activities like sports, yoga. So such activities where peer-to-peer participation is there, group participation is there. So basically, one is recreation is taking place plus less lone time. So these may be encouraged. These are the things that should be part of your suicide prevention strategy. Okay, so we have covered all this. Now we come to this main news over here, which is about the MSP hike. So first of all, let me tell you, MSP is the minimum support price. Minimum support price, which is basically a statutory obligation on the government, that government through its institutions like Food Corporation of India, etc., will give farmers, will buy their grains from farmers at a minimum rate. They're guaranteeing that if you produce surplus also, we will buy it. The government shall buy it through its agencies. The idea is that the farmers should not be disincentivized from producing more, because when they produce more, when farmers produce more, there is more supply, there is a chance of the fall in prices. So bumper crops most likely results in price crash. This is not good, and this is not good for the food security of the country. Okay, now this is one thing. The government buys it, stores the grains. What does it do with the grains then? It sells it, or it distributes it through its public distribution setup. So those who are from the below poverty line, who are the needy population, those are given the grains at a very subsidized rate. Okay, right. So this is the mechanism of the MSP. Now MSP is decided or declared by the government. The cabinet committee on economic affairs, to be more specific, gives issues, says the MSP is increased or reduced, whatever. That is their prerogative. But the cabinet or the government decides on the recommendation of CACP, the Committee on Agricultural Cost and Prices. So on the recommendations of CACP. This is attached to the Ministry of Agriculture. These are important points. So they give recommendations. They do not decide the MSP. They give recommendations. They analyze the cost. And they analyze what should be the fair cost that the farmers should get, fair price the farmers should get. So they give the recommendations to the cabinet or the government, and they finally declare it. Their decisions are not binding. Okay. Now the CACP, or sorry, let's put it cabinet, has decided to increase the MSP, and it is in the range of 6 to 8%. Okay, so that hike has been done. But there is a very important thing in that hike. It has anchored the MSP. It has anchored the MSP at 150%, 1.5 times or 150% of the cost. That formula has been used. So cost, of course, cost increase plus 50% over and above that price. So that formula has been followed. So there is a significant hike in the MSP that has taken place. So naturally, Niti Aayog, the advisors and the other committees have raised concerns about the feasibility of the hike in the MSP, especially this anchoring that has been done. So they are saying, first of all, if the MSP is increased substantially, naturally, the government is paying more price to buy the grains. So this will push or increase agricultural prices. The things that you get in mandi, their prices will also increase as a result of this. So this will lead to increase in food inflation or price rise. So that is concern number 1. So either you decide farmer welfare, farmer would like to sell it at a higher price. But when that happens, obviously the price of food, the price of the produce also increases. So this will increase substantially. That is concern number 1. Second concern, Niti Aayog is saying that in reality, the prices have not increased much. So the cost has not increased much for the farmers. So they are saying the real wages, the farmers may be employing labor for cultivation activities. So the real wages has not increased. It is not rising. And further, the subsidy on urea, the fertilizer prices have also not increased because the government has been bearing that cost. Fine. Diesel prices, diesel is required for running the tractors and everything, even for that matter, tube wells also. So diesel prices are also stagnant. It is not going to increase substantially. So they are saying that increase in price was not warranted. So it is not warranted. However, the department, the Department of Expenditure as well as the CACP, they are defending this move, the Ministry of Agriculture, that the increase is in lines with the increase in the cost. So 6% hike is according, the increase is justified. MSP is justified. Okay. Department of Expenditure is also saying that this is fine. We can make that much amount of spending. The government can spend so much. Now you might be wondering as to how much money is being spent on subsidy. So the government expenditure on procurement of food is 2,12,907 crores. And with the hike in MSP, the additional burden will be 13,819 crores. So this, the Department of Expenditure is saying that we can do it. Fine. Moving on. Now with the increase in MSP is a kind of subsidy. There may be concerns with WTO, World Trade Organization. So in WTO, there is something known as Agreement on Agriculture. So Agreement on Agriculture says that there are various types of subsidies, greens, which are put into different boxes. So green box, blue box, and amber box. So minimum support price, etc., comes under the amber box. Amber box includes subsidy which are price distorting. They distort the prices. This will affect the global trade. So increasing MSP may put us into violation of the MSP norms concerning the price distorting subsidy. However, at the present moment, we are within limits. So all the arguments that are there with reference to MSP hike, we have suitable defense as well. So with reference to the price distorting subsidy, there is something called as de minimis. It is saying that the maximum subsidy that is given by a developing country, that can be 10% of agricultural value. So at present, it is at a lower level than this de minimis level. But we are gradually rising and we may breach this level very soon. So that is a concern. Fine. So you have the concerns associated with the MSP. I think I should sum it up so that it becomes easy. So significant increases there if we anchor the MSP to the formula of 150% of the cost. So 1.5 times of the cost if we follow this formula. So Niti Aayog has raised concern. They are saying cost has not increased. Further, they are saying that expenditure will increase. So you have the fact on expenditure 2.12 lakh crores. So that is a substantial expenditure is there. And other concern is with reference to WTO obligations. So we should not be engaging in trade distorting subsidies and we should be within limits. So those concerns are raised. Those are well defended by Ministry of Agriculture. Now here, last issue over here. Department of Expenditure is saying that we are okay with the increase in MSP. So they had issued a report to the government, but they have this. They gave a report which had this report based on price and non-price measures. So price measures are fine. You're doing it in respect to that. But if you want to do price related measures, you should also focus on 9 non-price measures. So some recommendations have been made by the Department of Expenditure. They are saying that we should focus on farm mechanization. Farm mechanization should be done to address the concerns of labor shortage. Now, obviously, farm mechanization involves heavy machinery. These are expensive, not easily accessible. So for that, we should focus on cooperative farming. We should focus on creating self-help groups or custom hiring centers where you don't buy a machine, but you rent it for a certain time. So that is one, farm mechanization. Next, we should focus on improving the storage infrastructure. So storage, warehousing, transportation, logistics. So that has to be improved. Now imagine the horticulture, for example, vegetables. So if they are stored, obviously we will be able to manage the prices much better because we need the cold storage, etc. Otherwise, these things go bad. So we need to improve the storage setup. And I'll add one more point not mentioned here: market reforms. Right, so those are the important steps that need to be taken. Yes. This one is about intellectually challenged. This is with reference to children. So what is the government doing? This is only with reference to Chandigarh now. So in Chandigarh, we have a scheme known as Government Rehabilitation Institute for Intellectual Disabilities. So this has been formed to look into this issue. And under this, especially for children, there is focus on vocational training. So vocational training has been emphasized. So, the children go to schools, so they have a standard framework, but children with special needs, so special arrangements have to be made with that. So standardized education framework shall not work. We have to focus on other ways. So here they have been focusing on vocational education so that they can meet their livelihood needs. This includes stitching, masala grinding, making of paper bags, biodegradable sanitary napkins, etc. Okay. Then more emphasis on sports, yoga, dance. And in fact, these children are doing well in that. They're getting prizes. Besides this, focus on clinical and therapeutic intervention, that is medicines, etc., at OPD level. So that is being given focus, emphasis. Then community outreach program. So community outreach, sensitizing parents about needs. They should be aware that maybe their child has a intellectual disability which needs to be attended to, or to be sensitive to the other person. So that is being worked upon by community outreach program. Further, those who are affected, their parents must encourage social interactions. So these are the things that are being worked upon. So vocational training, clinical intervention, community outreach program, and social interactions. Okay. Now we come to this topic of short duration discussion versus calling attention notice. So Dushyant Chautala, right, who's the Deputy Chief Minister of Haryana, he has locked horns. He first had a disagreement with Deputy Speaker. So some opposition, the opposition wanted to have a discussion on certain matter. So they brought in a resolution to introduce short duration discussion. But the Deputy Speaker, even on its own initiative, converted the short duration discussion into calling attention notice. So calling attention notice. So Deputy Speaker did it himself. Now, mind you, Deputy Speaker will be from the opposition. And this thing is something that the government may not be liking. So he has a disagreement with the Deputy Speaker. So Speaker probably takes side of the Deputy Speaker, and therefore a disagreement with the Speaker also. Now let us see what is the short duration discussion and calling attention notice. So it's explained over here. So it says, any MLA can raise this issue of short duration discussion, any MLA. And if it is granted by the speaker or deputy speaker, whosoever is the chair at that time, so the MLA who has raised the concern, he can raise whatever issue is there. He can make a short speech of 7 minutes. So that can be done. He can speak, deliberate, whatever. And in response to that, the concerned minister will reply. That's it. End of story. The issue is raised and minister gives a reply. So normal time is 7 minutes. It's not mentioned here. I did some elsewhere. I searched. Okay. Now, what is the calling attention motion? It's basically the same thing. Only thing is when the minister replies, the MLA who raised the issue, or any MLA for that matter, can ask supplementary questions. So obviously, when supplementary questions are asked, things become more difficult. So that is the calling attention notice. None of them are mentioned in the constitution. These are parliamentary conventions, right? It is sometime 1954, 1953, these came into being. Okay, these are important topics, easy to be overlooked. Sorry. Good on paper and in intent, wastewater project finds no ground for implementation. So basically, there is a village which so Sarpanch wanted to have, wanted to retreat the wastewater. I hope you understand what is wastewater, sewage water, bad water. So recycle it and use it in farms, agriculture. So wastewater, and that is something which is very, very much required. In fact, agriculture consumes 4/5 of the total available water resources. So this was to be done. But apparently it seems that there is some sort of a tension between the local MLA and the Sarpanch. So MLA is not supporting and therefore no implementation is taking place. Now let us look at it from UPSC point of view. So need for a wastewater policy. Why do we need it? Obviously, water scarcity. What are the prospects? What is the feasibility? What needs to be done? That is something we need to prepare. And when we talk about wastewater policy, sometimes we also find an expression known as grey water policy. Now, what is grey water? Let me tell you, it is slightly different from wastewater. Grey water is basically bad water, which is not contaminated with fecal waste. Latrine, etc. It is not contaminated with that. For example, when you use your hand wash, you wash your hands. So that water that drains down the sink, it is grey water. While when you flush, use the toilet, and when you flush, that is not grey water. Now this water can be treated and it can be then reused, right? And reused for multiple applications like gardening, etc. That can be done. Okay. Now for this, the government has a scheme already. The Jal Shakti Mantralaya, the water ministry, has a scheme which is known as Sujalam 2.0. So they already had Sujalam, now they have Sujalam 2.0. So this is when March 2022, Jal Shakti Minister launches Sujalam 2.0 campaign. I've shared this PIB also with you. So I told you after this minister's image, we get facts. So why we need it, how much achievements are there, all that information we get. So this is about managing the grey water, managing the wastewater. So that it's about this. And it is saying that Sujalam 2.0 will focus on managing grey water through people's participation. People have to be engaged. Otherwise, the government may keep bringing scheme, but if people think it is bad water, contaminated water, they will not use it. So involve people at the very earliest stage possible. So mobilize communities, mobilize panchayat, schools, Anganwadi to undertake grey water management. So that is the thing. Basically, this is all we have over here. Okay. Now, with reference to this, we have Sujalam. Likewise, there is another scheme known as Atal Bhujal Yojana. So, Bhujal Yojana. Bhujal means groundwater. And Sujalam is with reference to the treated water, basically treating wastewater or grave, making it into grey water also, sewage water into grey water. That is also Sujalam 2.2. And Atal Bhujal Yojana, Bhujal, Bhu means earth, Jal means water. And another scheme of the government is Jal Shakti Mantralaya is Jal Jeevan Mission. Jal Jeevan Mission is its slogan is Har Ghar Jal. It's Har Ghar Jal, and its purpose is that by next year 2024, all rural households should have tapped water connection. Fine. So these are the things that we are covering. Now moving on to the next news. In flood hit Punjab, why zoning of floodplains is important. Okay, so I think you know by the very definition what we mean by this. I really don't have to explain. Now let us have the definition of floodplains. So a floodplain is an area adjacent to the river which normally gets flooded when the river swells. Imagine this is the river, right? Now not every time the river is flowing, you can see that flyovers also are certain places like on highways. So not every time, there's sometimes dry area also. So in the off season, the farmers tend to settle over there, cultivate those fields areas. Now what happens is, but when water is flowing like in the monsoon season, etc., this area also will be flooded by the water. Okay. Now this area is very, very fertile because of the alluvial soil. It is very fertile. Now sometimes the water may not flow at all from that area and for a reasonably longer period of time. So these people who settled over there, with them comes, they start making pakka houses. Sometimes proto-urban facilities also come in, right? Urban-like facilities also come in, like basics of urban infrastructure. Also, some construction activities takes place. So concretization takes place along this area. Now, naturally, when the floods come, when the deluge happens, deluge is a bad flood. So when that happens, people are residing over there and they will be affected badly. Further, when you have concretized, concrete does not allow percolation of water into the soil. So the impact of flooding is much, much more. In fact, there should not be any concretization at all in the vicinity because this does not allow the recharge of groundwater. So that is not a good thing. Now, with this regard, the National Green Tribunal, NGT, they had advised the governments that area adjacent to the center of the river, 500 meters from the center of the river, no construction activity should be taking place. It even gave orders to the chief secretaries, etc., but nothing really happened on that regard. But now, because of this deluge, etc., some sincerity can be seen with reference to clearing up this area. So let's see how much of it happens in the long run. Okay. Now, why is it mapping is so now they are basically zoning it. They are creating maps on this so that this does not take place. So if this is actually implemented, it will be good because people can be evacuated or people can be moved out from this area. Concretization can be removed. So this will be good. MSP hike by 5 to 10% on Kharif crops did not alone move the needle on inflation. Okay, so it's basically we have some 2 points. So it's saying that MSP, it's obviously food prices increase, so it should lead to inflation. But there are other factors also. So first it is saying is that weightage of the cereals, MSP is mainly concerning the cereals. So weightage of the cereals is only 2.748% in the WPI basket. Wholesale price index has number of items. So of this, its weightage is only 2.748%. There were supply side issues. For example, tomato not available. Right, so tomatoes, vegetables. So there were supply side issues. It was not increase in price, but supply was only not there. So which actually pushed the inflation. I forgot to read this. Amrit Rakshaks. If you can Google it, that will be nice. So Amrit Rakshak is MHA is recruiting personnel for various central armed police forces, CRPF, PSF, SSB. So these must be Amrit Rakshaks. And for army, recruits are now being known as Agni Veers. Recently, the Home Ministry, through the Parliament, amended the penal codes. So 3 bills were introduced. So IPC will now be known as Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. Bharatiya CRPC will be known as Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sahita, and Bharatiya Sakshya Bill. Bharatiya Sakshya Bill is Indian Evidence Act. So they're saying that we are reforming this. So with this reform, the time taken for conviction, time taken for trials will be less, because previous laws were too complicated. We have simplified the laws. Moving to the next article, NARDECO, NAREDCO. This is an association of National Real Estate Development Council. It's an association for real estate sector. Okay. So on Niti Aayog report, Niti Aayog is the chairperson is Amitabh Kant. So his panel submitted a report. So Kant panel report or Niti Aayog report on real estate. So yeah, so basically we are looking at real estate, the issues with real estate very briefly, and what recommendations have been made, although we don't really get much points. Now before going forward, let me tell you, NAREDCO is attached to the Ministry of Urban Development. So it's it's referred to as association, but it is attached to the Ministry of Urban Development. It is not a statutory body. It's not created by a law of the Parliament. Okay, fine. So what is some of these steps that are mentioned over here? So real estate sector is getting affected. It is not getting investments. A lot of money is stuck up in some projects, legacy projects. So here, the report has said that the various stakeholders, be it developers, people who are making these projects, financiers who have funded these projects, and land authorities, government authorities, they should take haircuts. They should make concessions. And now we're talking about developers could be in terms of profit and loss. Financiers could be in terms of let go of that money, right? So unfreeze that money. So haircuts. So that should be taken. So they should be taking certain losses, all stakeholders over here. So that would allow for the loans that are stuck up, that can be freed up. So that is the idea. Further, previously in the news, there was mentioned that home buyers do not get possession. You know, at the end of the day, it is the home buyer who's making investment, who's buying the houses. So if the home buyer does not get a possession, it is not a good thing. So this process of giving possession to the home buyer, this should be rationalized. This should be made easy, relaxed. So that is very, very important. So that has been recommended. So these 2 steps were mentioned. NARDECO is not happy with this. They are saying that real estate people, they are not happy. They are saying that we should have tailor-made solutions. You are giving a very general overview of the thing. We want more specific solutions. Okay. Now I would like to add more points. So one is haircuts, stuck up of the projects, possession to home buyers. Then people are not willing to invest in the real estate sector because the return or the yields on investment is low, right? So the yield is low. So something should be done to push up the yields in the real estate sector, make it more attractive. Now with this regard, we have an instrument known as Real Estate Investment Trust, REITs. These are something like mutual funds for stock markets. Likewise, they are REITs, which takes in money from different people and invests in commercial properties, etc. So the return is then handed over to the people in terms of units they buy of the REITs. Next article, 370 hearing. In 2019, 100 mistakes of the past. Okay, fine. So mistake that is being mentioned is Article 370, and they are saying that Article 370, after Article 370, there was Article 35A, which was introduced through a presidential order, not mentioned in this news. So this Article 35A provided for the arrangement of how Jammu and Kashmir would function within the Indian constitution. It was more specific. Let me put it that way. Okay. So in this, more or less with Article 35A, more or less, J&K constitution was aligned with the Indian constitution, save certain provisions, with certain exceptions. So there are these exceptions are permanent resident, so that was not there, and denial of 3 fundamental rights. Right. So acquisition of property was not allowed for outsiders. It was only for the people of Jammu and Kashmir who have been defined as permanent residents of that place. So otherwise, in other parts of India, anybody can settle anywhere. I have a domicile in Punjab. I can move to anywhere else in the country, no issues. Any other state, no issues. But Jammu and Kashmir, you could not do so. So permanent resident, and the 3 fundamental rights, which are Article 14, Article 15, Article 19. So Article 14 is equality before law, so everybody is equal. But if you have a class of people who are permanent residents, by very virtue, equality is not there. Coming to Article 15, in Article 15 is prohibition of discrimination. So where is Article 15? Article 15. So Article 15 is prohibition of discrimination on grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. I said only because on other grounds discrimination can be done. Okay. 15.4. Nothing in the provision shall prevent the state from making any special provision for advancement of a socially and educationally backward class. So reservation basically. And Article 19 is multiple things. Article 19.1, and one of them is freedom to movement, freedom to reside anywhere in the country. So obviously that is not there when you have the clause of permanent residential. Okay, so these were the articles. And I think I did not mention one thing. I gave you a reference of this Amit Shah saying this amendments in the criminal law. So this statement was made at the zonal council for the West Zone. So I think we should see the zonal council also for prelims also. So I have 2 sources. So one is the Ministry of Home Affairs website, and the other one is this Wikipedia page. So here you can see there are 6 zonal councils that have been mentioned. But if you look at the books, they say there are 5 zonal councils and 1 for the northeastern states. So 5 plus 1. Okay, so that is one thing. So if you look at this Ministry of Home Affairs, so you see they are north, central, east, west, south, and one separately has been mentioned for northeastern states. Okay. Further, I want to say that zonal councils are not mentioned in the constitution. They are actually statutory bodies. They were set up via the provisions of the States Reorganization Act. Now, we do have a body, something like a zonal council. These are known as interstate councils. These are mentioned in the constitution. Okay, so this is basically revision. I expect you would have studied Lakshmikant polity. Okay. Next, center tells top court only it can conduct census. So census. So okay, fine. How this controversy comes in? Bihar says we will have a caste survey. So the central government has a problem with that. They are saying that only center can do it. They have told the courts that only the center can do it. This is provided by the Census Act, and only the union, if you look at the 7th schedule of the Constitution, the power to conduct census is exclusively with the union under entry 69 of the 7th schedule of the Constitution. Next, Supreme Court, lawyers can solemnize self-respect marriage in Tamil Nadu. This is part of self-respect movement, which we should study. In fact, I would advise you to make a note of this for your GS1 mains, modern history. So let's see how this issue came up. So there is this person known as Illa Varasan. He got married, so he has a wife under the self-respect marriage. Self-respect marriage is also known as Suya Maritalai. So I'll zoom it. Suya Maria Talai. So these are self-respect marriage. This is basically a form of marriage which says that all these, in the Hindu religion, there are a lot of rituals, customs that have to be followed, and the marriage is solemnized by the priest. So those things are simplified over here. So very simple setup. The marriage can be done in the company of friends, relatives, etc. So they had a simple marriage under the self-respect marriage. Now, fine. So what is the problem? The wife's family did not agree, and they have taken her with them. So they have taken her into the custody. So Ilvasan goes to the Madras High Court. He goes to the Madras High Court and applies for habeas corpus. That is, bring the person. So you must have studied in habeas corpus, right, to constitutional remedies 1. Okay, so the writ powers of the Supreme Court and the High Court. Okay, Madras High Court denied this. So he goes to the Supreme Court, he appeals. Supreme Court says there is nothing wrong with this. We don't know about what happened with reference to the wife. I think it repatriated with the husband, so most likely that may have taken place. So you know about the self-respect marriage. Its traditional name is Suya Maria Talai marriage. Maria Thai marriage, no Talai, the Thai marriage. So self-respect movement. So under the headache of the depressed classes, social reform movement, under the classes of depressed classes, or the Dalit, this topic is mentioned in your books. So self-respect movement was started in 1925 by S. Ramanathan, who invited E.V. Ramaswamy. E.V. Ramaswamy is the main person. He is also known as Periyar by his followers. So it was founded in E.V. S. Ramanathan. Okay, so E.V. Ramaswamy was also part of the self-respect movement. And it basically worked on the issue of the domination of the priestly caste, the caste system. Right? So the reformist movement basically, so self-respect movement was associated that everybody should have self-respect. And the notion of in superior caste and inferior caste should be vanished. So this self-respect movement further gave to various political parties, political movements. So two major political parties are DMK and later AIA-DMK. So they have their origins in the self-respect movement. You have to, I think you should prepare a note on this subject matter. Moving on, we are now on the to this editorial and the opinion page. Okay, just a second. My goodness, 50 minutes. Yeah, so I'll just cover this briefly. The cutting edge. India should play a role in shaping global AI regulatory order while nurturing domestic ecosystem to build AI expertise. Now, with reference to this, I'll just tell you, you should refer the UNESCO website that I shared on the Telegram. You will get You will get ethical concerns associated with the AI. So one is ethical issues with the use of AI. The other topic that we mentioned yesterday was algorithmic bias, right? So algorithmic bias, so that is there. Uh, yeah, so that has to be dealt with. Then when we talk about the framework that is provided in the link as to what all things should be taken into account when when we are looking at regulating AI. In today's article, very briefly, certain things are mentioned with respect to the AI as to what is happening basically. So first of all, with AI, there are certain concerns. There are concerns with reference to issues of privacy, then bias and discrimination. There are concerns about security risk and intellectual property rights. Right? So there are certain concerns with the use of AI. Okay, so that is there. Now, there has been a talk previously about having an international regulatory body for AI, while Elon Musk had said that there should be a pause on AI development. There are certain legitimate concerns about the use of AI. Now, there are foreign countries, international world, where there is a work going on regulating AI. So the European Union has taken a tough stance on the use of AI, and further, they have made a law on this, and they have created a body known as European Artificial Intelligence Board. And they have asked the companies to rate AI projects on the basis of risk that is minimal, limited, high, and unacceptable. UK has taken a light touch approach to regulation of the AI. Now coming to India, we have TRAI, Telecoms Regulatory Authority of India, which is saying that there should be an independent statutory authority. So like in Europe, we should have a body of our own here, and we should have AI use cases based on their risk. So this is suggested by the TRAI. Yesterday's newspaper is a much better source to cover it. I would suggest visit that again and watch the first few minutes of that, because there it is covered on the front page. BRICS in perspective. We have an article from ex-diplomat who was posted in China. Okay. So we know that BRICS expanded. So BRICS has 5 members. Now they have 11 members. So it has Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, UAE, as well as Ethiopia and Argentina. So let's cover the pros first, and then we will come to the concerns. So India, except India had earlier concerns. China had proposed that BRICS should be expanded, but India had reservations on the same. But India had reservations on the same, but later on, India wholeheartedly said that this is a fine decision. It's a good decision. So there are pros associated with it. So with the expansion of the BRICS, the political clout of the BRICS will improve because more members are there, powerful countries are there. So political clout in global fora, etc., that will improve. Then what is? These nations come bring with them a lot of resources. For example, Saudi Arabia, UAE, we all know they have a lot of money, they have a lot of capital which they want to invest. So this may be used to capitalize the existing new development bank and contingency reserve agreement. With Iran, we can focus on connectivity initiatives. With Ethiopia and Egypt, we can focus on integration with the African economies. So South Africa, Africa is already represented through South Africa, but Africa is a big continent, and it's at the southernmost part. There are so many other nations which should have a voice over here. Okay, Argentina provides us access to Latin America, right? So these are certain positives with BRICS. And with all these countries, with all these resources, the voice of the global South increases because of this. In fact, there are 40 countries that want to be part of BRICS. By the way, this expansion comes under the Johannesburg Summit because this happened in the Johannesburg Summit. And this was the 15th BRICS Summit, Johannesburg Declaration. Now coming to the concerns. That is the main focus of this article. So, repeated actually the points. So main point is China. So China has its own strategic agenda. China came up with the idea of expansion of the BRICS. Now we know that China's ultimate objective is global supremacy, and they are having this Sino-US rivalry, China-US rivalry. They have been talking previously about de-dollarization of the world, which even India wants actually. De-dollarization, that is US currency, dollar is there predominant in trade. They want to have their own Chinese currency. In fact, BRICS has been talking about the BRICS currency that we should have. Next goal should be BRICS currency. Then the Chinese president has been giving references of Cold War, again referring to the US-USSR rivalry. So US world they're talking about. So we're talking about an alternative arrangement to this. Obviously, Sino-US rivalry, if we are part of any arrangement which is pitting us against USA, like for example BRICS, if BRICS becomes the voice of China, this will not be good for India-US relationship, and we are getting more and more entrenched into the US. Besides, with countries more preferable to China, who give more preference to China in the BRICS, so this may affect Indian interest. We already have Sino-India rivalry. Now, besides this, it was already bad that there is China-India tensions within the BRICS. We have Saudi Arabia and Iran, and Saudi-Iran fight on the smallest of the matters. So there is Saudi-Iran rivalry. So with this, obviously, it may become difficult for the BRICS to form a consensus on decision making. So there may be deadlocks in the functioning of BRICS in the future, like it happens with SAARC, with India and Pakistan. So this may be, there are certain shortcomings with reference to BRICS. However, it is also good because it helps India deal with the two countries simultaneously over here. Okay, that's the last of the editorial and opinion. Just this topic I want to mention. This line seems very interesting. The gap between technology as spectacle, like Chandrayaan-3 landing on the surface of the moon, so a spectacle, and science as a way of life is lengthening. So I think you can prepare this from essay perspective. It's a very interesting topic. Right. So science is going in a country. Science is there, definitely there, and we're making good, big achievements in the realm of science. Chandrayaan-3 is one of the things. I would suggest when you're writing an essay, mention other areas also. But when we come to the common man's life, we see more and more absence of scientific temper. So science as way of life cannot be seen. So here some examples are given: mob lynching, cow vigilantism, hate speech, dowry death, rural schools without teachers, hunger, malnutrition, overcrowded government hospitals, so healthcare, science. Okay. So muscular nationalism, obviously some of it is also critical testing of the government, but you can tone down your arguments over here. So science as a way of life, scientific temper in a daily life, you can talk about urbanization, right? Planned way is not going on. Concretization is, you can build that on it anyhow. Essay itself means attempt on this line. It's your free wish as to how you want to attempt it. A force to reckon with. This is about the Air Force. So this is retired air marshals, this thing. So basically he's saying that air power is very, very critical to India's big power ambitions. What are India's big powers ambitions? So one is India, obviously. On top there is China. So when we talk about China, our main and the land border, the main advantage that we get is the air power. our fighters are superior, our transport planes are superior. They can work in the higher altitudes. Right? China's because of their higher altitude in the Tibetan region, their capacity to carry load, missiles, etc., that is not so much. So that is one advantage that we have on the Sino-India border, on the mountains. So air power plays a very important role, even in terms of transferring soldiers, mobilizing soldiers from one place to another, border outposts. Okay. China, by the way, has been investing in this in the recent times. Besides this, what else? We are talking about the South China Sea. We are talking about the Strait of Malacca that tomorrow, if we have a tension in the border, we can choke China on the Indian Ocean region. Now, here again, we will need air power. It cannot be just ships. There has to be air power. There has to be. Now, air power can be of Navy also. So that is very much required. So within the Indian Ocean domain also, air power is required. So that is what the author is saying. Now, with reference to this, that we need to leverage air power. But the issue is, now this is not mentioned, the issue is that air power of India is diminishing. The sanctioned strength of Air Force is 42 squadrons. For squadron, regiment, battalion, etc. 42 squadrons. Each squadron has around 18-20 fighter planes. So available is only 30. Of this, we have planes like MiG-21, etc., which are very, very old legacy planes, and they should be phased out. If these planes are phased out, the strength of the Air Force will come down further. 26 Rafales are not adequate. We need a lot more of these planes. Right, so we need to boost our air strength if we have to leverage our air power. International section, US and China talks are going on. So USA's Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo visited China to discuss on export controls, but both sides are not ready to blink on disputes. So there is a deadlock over here. Okay. So there is also possibility of Japan becoming normalization of some attempt is made between Japan and China. Right? So some document, some letter is to be given to Chinese president. This has been delayed. This topic does not seem to be important. France decides to ban wearing of abaya in its state-run schools. Abaya is, let me show you. This is abaya, female dress. Again, Muslim girls would be wearing this. So this is being banned in France. So they say that this is a depiction of religion, especially in public institutions, etc. It should not be worn. So there, the notion of secularism is much, much stringent as compared to that of India or USA, anyhow. Now, their version of secularism is known as laïcide. It is mentioned over here. The strict band of secularism in France is known as laïcide. Okay. So, talking about this, let us see how UPSC asked this question. It has been asked twice. So, one question is, this is in GS2. We don't know IR or polity. So, what can France learn from Indian Constitution's approach to secularism? I think it's Indian Constitution only. Comparison of the constitutions, that subject. Okay. Right. So, Indian approach, Sarv Dharm Sambhav, positive secularism, while France's is negative secularism. Western model of secularism, Indian model of secularism. So that topic was asked. Coming to the economy section. So one news, this one is important. 50 crore came into banking system under Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. So Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana was when Prime Minister Modi, first time when he got elected, he introduced the scheme as a measure to bring in financial inclusion. That is, more people under the ambit of financial services. So Jan Dhan banks were opened. So these were free bank accounts, and it had credit facility, overdraft facility, that it's you could spend more than what is there in your bank account. So that was permitted. So certain limits, certain 2,500 or 5,000 rupees were there. Okay. Now they're saying that 50 crore people have come into the banking system, and these banks are being operated. These accounts are operated, and more of women, 55% of these are women, and 67% are in rural and semi-urban areas. So this is a good thing. Now talking about Jan Dhan Yojana, let me tell you about the Jan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity also. So Jan Dhan accounts, bank accounts are there. These bank accounts are linked to Aadhaar and your mobile phone. So mobile banking and all these facilities were made possible because of this to the poorest of the people. And the benefits of the government schemes many a times, like direct benefit transfer, were directly put into the Jan Dhan accounts through JAM Trinity. Jan, Aadhaar, Aadhaar means authentication, and mobile. Current account deficit seen falling to around 1% of the GDP Q1. So what was the previous number? Previous year, corresponding same time, it was 2.1%. Reason has not been mentioned. Right? Why it's not mentioned. So 58 firms registered for IT hardware PLI so far. So production linked incentive scheme. This is a scheme for promoting the sunrise sector, bringing in more people in priority areas. So production linked incentive scheme. In this, what happens is the government says that we will be providing a subsidy. For example, here 17,000 crore subsidy is to be provided. So anybody interested, they gave their applications to the government. Of these, certain people are shortlisted, right? And they are required to produce and sell it into the market. So based on the sales that they do, production, but obviously sales is a reflection of production also. So much sales is done, on that basis, they get an incentive amount. They get a subsidy. So this is not seen as price distorting because it is on the sales, actual sales. So the people get subsidy, upfront subsidy. So that is the idea of the PLI scheme. And it is fairly transparent because it is on sales and not really production or anything. It is just basically on revenue generated. Okay, so this is PLI scheme. On moon, very hot to very cold, separated by just a few millimeters. So the Pragyan rover is going, it has a sensor known as CHASTE, which is meant to measure heat conductivity of the moon's surface. Its full form is Chandra's Surface Thermophysical Experiment. So it is being observed that in certain areas, the temperature is well over 50 degrees Celsius, and few millimeters apart, it can drop to minus 10 degrees Celsius. So huge variation in temperature is being noticed. And in general, we know that the surface of the moon is actually hot. Right? So it is in this observation is in line, but we didn't know about this. Next, we have these terms Shiv Shakti, Tiranga, and Jwahar Sthal. So let us cover this one by one. So we'll do this in this order. So Jwahar Sthal is with Chandrayaan 1. In Chandrayaan 1, which was in 2008, this mission on purpose crash landed a payload on the surface of the moon. So where it landed, it was known as the Jawahar Sthal, after the first name of the first Prime Minister of India. Then we have Chandrayaan 2, which was supposed to land Vikram and the rover Pragyan was to be there, but this did not happen and it crash landed, and it failed because of this. So this site is known as Tiranga, where the Vikram landed, crashed. And last comes Shiv Shakti. Shiv Shakti is where the Vikram landed, and Pragyan rover was released. Now, how the naming is done, briefly it's mentioned. So a name shall be proposed. This will go to International Astronomical International Astronomical Union, IAU. So IAU task group will look into this. Then they will give a recommendation to the working group for planetary system nomenclature. They will put it to vote and then the naming will take place. Now we come to the Aditya L1 solar mission that we said in the front page. So what is this? So Aditya means sun. So India will be sending their satellite using a rocket known as PSLV XL. So it will orbit around the Earth. This is Earth, right? So you know this pattern. It will use the sling force of the Earth's gravity, and then it will enter the cruise phase and eventually enter the orbit of the sun. Now on the sun's orbit, there are certain Lagrange's point, L1, L2, L3, L4, L5. So it will reach L1. Now what are these points, Lagrange's points? These are nothing but these are places where if a satellite is dropped, it will continue to remain at that place. So it is said over here that the gravitational pull of the sun is equal to the centripetal force required for a small object to move. Fine, so that's it. So basically this thing is it's in a state of equilibrium, because if it is not there, this thing will go downwards because of attraction to the surface of the sun. So more or less the gravitation is equated with is countered by the centripetal force. Now I have a problem reading this because centripetal force is the inward force. Gravitational force is also inward force. It is actually the centrifugal force which is the outward force. So I think this term is wrongly mentioned. Fine, centrifugal force acts in the opposite direction to that of gravity. And it is because of the centrifugal force that we have the circular motion. Okay, with this, the satellite will be able to observe the outermost surface of the sun. We'll be able to observe the photosphere, chromosphere, and the outermost layer of the sun known as corona. Why do we need to know about all this? Because the sun affects the Earth. The sun has solar flares and all that. So how does it function? All that we will get to know. We shall also know about the Earth's atmosphere and its interaction with these solar flares. That knowledge we will get. Now, from point of view, we should think as to, is there a satellite already there, which is, somebody has already done this? Yes, of course. So that program is known as SOHO. So SOHO is there, Solar and Heliospheric Observatory. This is a joint initiative of the European Space Agency and NASA. Fine, and it is in one of the Lagrange's point. It has to be there only. So here again it is written as centripetal force. Fine. That's what I have recently taught actually in science class. Okay, so this is it from today's news analysis. Thank you for streaming into our channel IASPrimers with me, Shubhashish. Bye bye and all the best.